How many hours and years of our lives do we spend on work? For nearly all of us, we spend 30 plus years and 1/3 of our days in our vocation. More time perhaps than we spend at rest or at play. But this isn't a problem. Why? Because work is good. Work needs to be integrated deeply into our lives and must be in line with our most important goals and values. And if it is, we have a far more complete and fulfilling life experience. Welcome to the How People Work podcast, where we explore the intersection of how humans think and act and how they apply themselves to their work. When you understand both of these things, you'll be equipped to be insightful, compassionate, and compelling leaders. Welcome back to How People Work. This is your co-host, I would say it, Jordan Peace, and your real host, Jason Murray. Ladies and gentlemen.
/ co-host. Not real. Well, I am real.
It's like founder and co-founder. Do you remember we met, I don't remember who it was now, but there was some small company we met that we were thinking about either bringing them on as a client or partnering with them in some way. Mm-hmm. And we met a guy who was the co-founder. Mm-hmm. And he introduced us to the CEO who referred to himself as founder.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't let his co-founder call himself founder.
Right.
It was founder and co-founder as if that were a lesser thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which the math doesn't work there.
No, it
at
really
all.
Doesn't.
You either have a founder or you have co-founders, just for the record.
Yeah. Do you remember back when we were like 5 employees?
I do.
And we were talking to an investor and they were like, "Where's your CEO?"
Oh, and we were like,
There's
Jordan?
Does
somebody want to?
5 of us?
Yeah, right.
So, I mean,
it was kind of funny. We just forgot to elect a CEO in the beginning. We were just like, we're just doing this
didn't
thing.
feel like you needed one at that point.
Yeah, it really didn't. Anyway, we are sashaying our way into the next episode.
You got it.
Yeah, I just, there's no way I was going to work it in later because it has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Kind of perfect, though.
And as we go, so we talked last time, we are digging deep into a survey that we have done. We talked about last time about creating a positive and satisfying employee experience and how that was the number one struggle when we asked over 500 participants in our survey of HR professionals, what is your greatest challenge in your job? And the number one most frequent response was creating a positive and satisfying employee experience. So Jason, where do you want to take us from here in our data and our analysis of that data today?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to hit on kind of the next one in there. And I mean, we'll unpack these things, and hopefully the format of the podcast allows for our audience to maybe humor us to go a little bit deeper on some of these topics.
Well, it's not a radio show. They can't call in and stop us,
It's true.
That
would be kind of fun, though.
Just kind of talk about what we want.
If they called in real angry,
they'll
and
vote
like,
with
"Damn it, stop talking
or
about
not listening." That's how they'll vote.
We should stop talking about human flourishing and all that crap. Just get to the point. Yeah. So
hey, Joe Rogan has 3 and 4 hour episodes.
That's true.
So I don't think we need to feel rushed to get to the point.
I mean, that's really just my ideal job, honestly.
It
It's
really
sit around and talk to interesting people.
Smoke cigars and talk to interesting people for half a day.
That sounds pretty cool to me.
It does. We're just jealous.
We are, very much so. So one of the things that came out of the research was around tools and budget to support employee well-being. So what are some of the needs that HR professionals have? And just as a reminder to everyone, this was a convergence of both a survey that we did with these questions that we asked, as well as about 24 different interviews that we conducted with chief people officers primarily, and a couple other folks that are HR consultants, to kind of arrive at the insights that we gleaned from this. And one of the things that really stood out to me, especially in the market that we're in right now, that HR teams are being charged with is, there's a saying that's doing the
more
same,
with less.
Yeah, doing more with less. And really, I think the mantra that we've heard is, the charge is doing more with the same.
Okay. In terms of resources
and budget. So I think there is sort of a perpetual felt need that most HR teams feel, which is they're under-resourced. Yes. So that was always one of the jokes that I told when I was in sales was I never came across an HR person that felt that they were under-resourced, and you always get a good job.
Or over-resourced.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry.
That's okay. You're rusty on the joke.
I am rusty on the joke.
You're head of innovation now. It's okay.
And so, yeah, the charge now seemingly is that, the same budget exists.
Yeah.
Most companies don't seem to be cutting budget significantly around people programs, but doing more with the same. One of the problems, though, is how do they maximize efficiency? And so one anecdote in particular, I think, helps illustrate this. So there's a chief people officer that I spoke with who's the CPO of a major software company, actually in the HR space.
Okay.
They have about 700 employees. And she was describing to me that when she stepped into that role, they had over 42 pieces of software that were in their people stack, as they call it.
I'll be honest, when I scanned this quote that you're looking at right now, I thought that was your hyperbole.
No.
I thought you were just saying 42, some insane. She said that.
She said that.
Over 42.
Yes.
Software solution.
Yes.
For 700 people.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the reason I find it believable is think about the software stack even that we have at Fringe, and
but this is just their people stack.
Yeah,
this is just
I think it's for any piece of software that the HR team has to manage that touches something related to the employee experience.
Jeez.
Right, so it could be a whole bunch of different things because you got HRIS, payroll, rewards and recognition, benefits, ben admin, et cetera, right? So I mean, sales tools.
Then all these point solutions for these,
ad
hoc things.
And so I'd say that's probably on the high end of the spectrum. I don't think you're going to come across a ton of companies that are like, hey, we had 42 pieces of software in there. They were themselves a software company. And so there's kind of a predisposition towards that.
Right. And to some degree, it demonstrates probably something very positive. I'm not sure it had a positive impact to have that many pieces of software. It probably didn't because that's kind of chaos for the employee to navigate all of that. But it probably demonstrates a desire that, hey, we're trying to help. We're trying to solve problems. We're really trying to kind of push things forward in our employee
I think that's true. And I think, they're one of those companies that we would say they get it.
They get it.
They have that philosophy. They're trying to deliver on a really positive and good employee experience. And I think largely they are. And one of the things that I think is interesting that's happened that in some ways is sort of maybe inevitable is, let's look at the last 20 years, right? Well, one of the things that's happened in the last 20 years is the great proliferation of SaaS software, cloud-based software.
Yeah.
That, rewind 20 years ago, we're still talking dial-up internet, right? So the world's changed a lot in the last 20 years in terms of the tools available to us. And so what happened was, innovators and entrepreneurs out there started saying, hey, well, now there's this technology enables the creation of these tools that can make certain things easier.
Right.
And so what you have is these siloed solutions that started popping up to meet these, needs in the employee experience that were identified or needs that maybe existed from, sort of archaic systems that existed previously. How did you sign up for your benefits before? Pen and paper.
Right.
Guess what? How do you sign up for it now?
And
it's
now
all
you
digital.
got your Anthem insurance, and now I can build a piece of software that tell you where the nearest in-network doctor is.
Exactly. And so all these entrepreneurs built all these great solutions that do one thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe a couple of things, but they probably do one thing really well.
Yeah.
And then they started trying to expand into some of these other things. And so when you look at these charts of market maps, it's really crazy because, you go from 10 years ago, hey, there were just a handful of, HR technology platforms.
Right.
Mainly they did payroll.
Yeah.
Right. And then some were starting to do HRIS and things like that. And now you look at it and it's there's literally thousands upon thousands of different HR technology solutions that do all sorts of things. And so what's happening is HR professionals are faced with this challenge of how the hell do we combine all of these things in any kind of way that's efficient? I can't even imagine managing 42 different solutions. What is the employee experience like? I mean, how do you even keep track of who's logging into what and how do they connect with one another?
How do you have time to meet with all of the CSMs at all the different software companies once a quarter? Like how do you even do that and
Right.
do the rest of your job?
So I'll say that, the insight, which, may not seem like much of an insight because it seems obvious, but it was a sentiment that was consistently expressed across all the interviews in particular that we did, was we've got to consolidate these solutions to deliver on people programs. And so we can't have all these siloed single point solutions that do only one thing. We really need something more comprehensive that's going to help deliver that employee experience more efficiently. And I think there's probably two sides to that are interesting. I mean, one is the business need, right? So if you're spreading your dollars paying for 42 different programs, there's probably a lot of waste there.
Yeah.
And so in an environment where companies are looking to save dollars, right, or at least go further, do more with the same dollars, you're going to say, hey, what can we cut? Or where are we getting the most bang for our buck, right? And similarly, you look at the employee experience side of that and say, like, how could 42 different solutions possibly deliver a consistent and optimal employee experience? So they probably can't. It's too fragmented and disjointed, and you got to log into a bunch of different things. And I probably forgot about 30 at least of the different solutions that are there that I might be using, right?
Totally.
And so I think, what's interesting now, and this is something that I sort of felt maybe intuitively that was validated, especially in the interviews that we're doing, is what you maybe call the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule. And so in this case, it's largely 20% of the features kind of within a lot of these software solutions, we're delivering 80% of the value. So when you think about maybe like a performance management tool, there's a bunch of them out there, these performance management tools that developed ways for companies to do employee reviews and so forth. But a lot of them have said, well, hey, we're going to start doing, employee engagement and surveys and all these other things. But when you look at how HR teams are using them, a lot of times they're only using a minimal piece of the tool, and that's delivering 80% of the value that they're getting out of it in terms of meeting some kind of business need. And so I think that presents us with an opportunity. And that's some of what we're talking about and thinking about at Fringe is how do we help maybe bridge some of those gaps? How do we help do some of that consolidation around all of these different software tools to help HR teams become more efficient? And not just for the sake of the business, but to deliver on this mission to support employees. And so I think that's where it actually ties back up into creating a positive employee experience, right? It's like, why does it matter that there's better tools that are consolidated together to do all these things more efficiently? Well, it's good for the business, it saves them money, but it's also good for the employee because you can deliver a better, more comprehensive employee experience in that way.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for employees to, especially a new employee. They're just trying to get to know the people and get to know the manager and the culture and what's expected of me. And then there's like a million pieces of software they need to learn just to engage in the employee experience, like the very internal and insular part of their job is just like participating in this culture here, right? Which has very little to do with the actual, most likely their actual role of like going out to sell or going out to support customers or going out to market or whatever the job is, right? So it's just a huge distraction and a huge kind of limiter of productivity if your employees are just looking around to find the right piece of software to, do one tiny task like ask for time off or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. An example just that's on a more personal level that I found interesting. So I'll ask you this. How many streaming services do you have currently?
Do you mean the ones that I pay for or the ones that I borrow from friends and family?
Let's just go with the ones you pay for because that in of itself.
Should I admit that on a public podcast? I didn't admit anything. I just asked a question. Let's see. Netflix. I've got Disney Plus, of course, because I've got 5 kids. We've got like Paramount Plus right now.
Oh, you have that?
Yeah, because there's some show we're trying to watch. I mean, that's what it always is. It's like the one show,
that's
right?
How they get you.
And that's how they get you. I don't have Hulu.
Sound like our parents saying things like that too. That's how they get you.
No, seriously. we talk about like all these generations. Like I'm pretty sure we're just boomers in our late 30s. I don't like 5.
Yeah.
5, 6 as far as TV.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the Spotify and like the music related things.
Yeah.
Audio books.
I wonder
7, 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say probably about the same.
Yeah.
Because Netflix was the first one just ever,
Yeah,
right? Like
right.
cloud streaming.
Right.
It was their vision.
Yes.
Then you had Hulu, and then you had all these other ones start popping up. And it's like, good Lord, like when is this going to end?
Yeah,
And-
Netflix got me recently.
Yeah.
They're on to me. They're like, you're not a part of the household that pays for this
that's the thing. They
and-
started cracking down on that.
Oh, they cracked.
Yeah.
They cracked, and I'm down. It's not good, man. Yeah. Ironically, my brother's
They're trying to make
password,
money, man.
His password is get your own account, and ironically, now I have to.
I mean, some engineer at Netflix has got to be laughing their ass
Yeah,
off.
right.
about
Just
that.
like this guy.
They're like,
his brother told him.
these people.
So anyway, so I'm down from like 7 to 6 now. Thanks, Netflix.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So it makes me think about, I mean, that's kind of like a trend, I suppose, in technology to some degree, is you kind of get this proliferation. But
Yeah.
I bet you start to get this consolidation, right? So
Yeah.
we're still in this expansion phase
Yeah.
where it's like going out now because everyone's trying to figure out how to monetize it, but
Yeah.
it's not working for everyone.
No.
And they're not all going to make money long enough for it to be a sustainable platform.
And how many have you signed up for to just watch one game?
Ooh.
Right? How many times have you signed up for Fubo? Like, how many email addresses have you used?
Sling TV.
Right, so Sling TV
Fubo.
to watch that one
Yeah.
game and then canceled it immediately after the game ended. Like we were in desperate need of consolidation,
Right.
with streaming services.
I'm going to say
but
it now. Prediction. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen,
Yeah.
but more so on the topic that we're on. We need consolidation in the HR space,
Right.
For these poor HR people that do nothing but RFPs all day long to try to
my
find
gosh.
a solution
Yeah.
that does one single thing, right? And then they have to meet with CSM after CSM, quarter after quarter, to talk about how the software is being used and the new features and blah, blah, blah. It's got to be exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's interesting though is, I mean, I think there's CFOs who are savvy, and we like to rag on CFOs.
Oh, very much so, yeah.
A lot because they often aren't thinking about the human impact of many of their decisions.
They're cheap, I think is what you're trying to say.
You said it.
I said it. I'll
Not
say
me.
it.
That's
That's their job.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I mean, they're
to an extent, yeah.
right. They're making decisions.
Their job really is to make the best use of the dollars
Yeah.
that are available.
It's
It's really a
pragmatic.
stewardship thing, but often it's
Right.
you default to the lowest common denominator, which is let's just spend less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting at that is some of these costs don't appear on a P&L or a balance sheet. So when you think about what's the cost of managing all these different programs, well, that's not something that shows up on a line item on the
people's
P&L,
time.
right?
Yeah.
It's just people's time. It's
Yeah.
maybe less obvious to a finance team that, these things are actually happening
Right.
even. And so I think, strategic HR professionals, and one of the things that was true with the interviews that we did is the folks that came from the operating side of the
Right.
business prior to going to HR were by far the most astute when it came to understanding, hey, we have to really look at these things,
Right.
from a pragmatic viewpoint.
Right.
We're trying to deliver the optimal employee experience, like the best employee experience we can.
Yeah.
But we have to be really thoughtful about
Yeah.
it, because the further we can stretch those dollars,
Yeah.
the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, and for the most part, I'd say a lot of HR people who work with they're people. Like they actually care about people.
Right.
And I won't make that cynical comment that just came to mind, but they're people, right? They start out that way, and some stay that way for their career, and so they look at that like 2% of people in the organization that use the student loan repayment benefit that you pay $6 per employee per month for, and they're like, we got to keep it. We got to keep it because that 2%, it means the world to them,
Yeah.
right? And that's some of why we've been successful with Fringe, is coming in going, hey, we have that. And we have about 160 different other
Right.
things
The things
as
people
well.
are going to love.
But that thing that you're worried about taking away, you're not taking it away.
Right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
They're going to get that too,
Right.
along with all the other things that we offer. And
Right.
that's really why we've been successful as a company, because we've been able to consolidate and aggregate these things into one place when it comes to the employee experience and Fringe benefits.
Well, something that I heard a few times when I was working on the sales side of Fringe and having conversations with people who were considering buying it, that I always found a little surprising was there'd sometimes be this sentiment of, we're going to cater to the needs of the most fringe employees. So the people who have the most unique needs that you might imagine, we're going to try and deliver something really great for them. And
you think the motivation there is coming from a place of like true empathy, or do you think that's coming from a place of like, I'm trying to get a win and have a good story to tell?
Well, I can be really cynical. So I tend to think that it's maybe ignorance at times, or virtue signaling.
Okay, fair, yeah.
Or just a lack of thinking through the just business implications, right? So like,
or maybe a squeaky wheel mentality.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that those services are invaluable, but like a good example would be companies bring up things like adoption assistance.
Right.
And like you and I, like we have people close to us that have adopted children.
We're big adoption,
we're huge pro-adoption people.
Definitely, yeah.
But the number of people inside your company that are going to need an adoption assistance program,
2%.
At most.
That's probably high.
It's minimal.
Yeah.
Minimal.
Right.
But if you're a large organization, like that's costing, literally tens of thousands of dollars per family.
Super expensive.
And so one of the things that I think is challenging is you look at it and say, well, would those dollars be deployed more impactfully elsewhere?
Right.
And that's a hard question to answer, right?
Yeah, or just more efficiently too.
Yeah.
Like, could you not solve that problem outside of a software solution?
Correct.
Could you not just identify the people that are looking for help with that and just directly help them with that through some other means, some sort of application program or something like that, where they could say, hey, I really need assistance in this way and here's why, versus, well, let's pay a per employee per month fee for something that less than 2% of people are going to use.
Yeah. So something that I thought was interesting that came up in this is, so despite the fact that many HR professionals feel that there are too many tools, so that was apparent in the research. Obviously, they also said in the survey that there's a need for more tools and budget to support employee well-being. So those two things kind of seem at odds, right?
Fascinating.
And so I think what it implies is that...
So they must not feel like they're getting the well-being that they're seeking, because there are a ton of pieces of software attempting to help well-being. Right. So it's not like they don't exist, but clearly the felt need is still there.
Yeah. So I think that's exactly one of the insights that I would have here, is that the current tools available are insufficient to meet the needs of the job at hand.
Interesting.
So if they're trying to deliver on this employee experience, it seems apparent that those tools at their disposal aren't sufficient to meet the needs. And potentially the investment in those programs is also insufficient. So maybe there's an investment taking place, but is it a meaningful enough investment?
Right.
And so when I think about the tools, like one of the things that comes to mind would be maybe in like rewards and recognition type programs. So like rewards and recognition programs have been around for probably 15 years.
Yeah.
You talk to most companies and say, hey, do you think you should have a rewards and recognition program? Everyone's probably going to say, oh yeah, we should totally have one.
Got to have it.
But if you look at all of the trends around employee well-being, employee engagement, employee loyalty, literally every single one of those metrics has declined over the last 20 years. Wow. And so we'd have to ask ourselves, well, are the current solutions for rewards and recognition working as promised?
Yeah.
And I think we'd have to say probably not. So the tools as they were created are maybe turning out to be insufficient to actually meet the demands of what the HR role is today.
What do you think is behind that? I feel like that'd be a good way to kind of, talk through the last few minutes of our episode. What do you think is behind the fact that as we talked about in the last episode, we do agree that there is a merit-based reward system that is useful for human beings to kind of self-actualize, to produce dignity in their lives and a feeling of kind of self-worth and so forth. So we're not anti rewards and recognition, right? And yet you've got that in place. You've got a lot of things in place for the last 15 years, and yet all of these sentiment metrics, as you mentioned, are just declining and declining. So what's broken?
I think part of it is a lack of vision.
On the part of
the companies. I mean, when you think about, company executives, right? And so, I mean, this isn't a knock on you or us necessarily, but
just say it. It's all right.
We're not HR professionals, right? Like we're not like,
that's true.
We didn't come up in the profession in a sense that like
we're more HR fanboys. I feel like that's kind of what we are.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And so like we have a point of view on the human experience and what we think the employee experience should be, but it's not rooted in like years or decades of experience. It's just like what we believe about things.
That's
and so
true.
I think you have a lot of executives that are responsible for making budget decisions and how these investments are made that simply don't have experience on the people side of the business.
That's true.
And they lack vision as a result. And then I think you have HR professionals that similarly, maybe don't have that experience or don't have that vision, right? What they have is what they were told a company needs.
Yeah.
So like what's very common in the industry is benchmarking, right? What we like to say is just keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of companies that I think are out there asking themselves, what is the best employee experience we can design for the people that work at this company?
Right.
They're just looking around saying, hey, are our benefits better than that company over there or that company over there? Right. And what happens then is because they're not aiming for some kind of particular vision, they're saying, oh, everyone seems to have this rewards and recognition platform. I guess we ought to have it too.
Right.
And so they're just kind of throwing stuff against the wall, see what sticks. And sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes they don't get the results they want, and they don't really know why. And I think it's really because they don't know what they're aiming for when it comes to that optimal employee experience.
I think that's really well put. I think it is vision. I think it's thinking for oneself. I think it's, some of the things we talk about with like anthropology and understanding like the meta narrative of the human race and where we came from and where we're going and what people need and human flourishing and some of these things are like just totally pushed aside for the sake of keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
For the sake of like, is really the best argument that we can make as HR professionals to our executive leadership. Well, they're doing it.
Right.
Like that's a child's argument.
Yeah.
Like, well, my buddy got ice cream. Can I have ice cream?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and the knock on executives though is they believe that story of like, oh, well, if we're going to compete with this company over here, we just got to do what they're doing a little bit better.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Or, well, yeah, if that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's literally just parity. Like the goal is parity.
Right.
And that's frustrating.
Right.
Like, are we not trying to improve? I mean, we're sitting here as entrepreneurs that are obsessed with improving things and making things better and innovating. I get that there's a kind of a personality difference there, but it is maddening to think that we're just going to continue to do the same thing and expect a different result.
Yeah.
For how many decades are we planning to do this?
I think what's interesting though, and this is something that I think you and I have talked about a bunch on this podcast, like the idea of human flourishing. And I think at the root of the notion of human flourishing is that there are core human needs that are, let's just say, universal, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone needs these things to live a satisfying and fulfilling and a whole life that feels purposeful. And so when I was interviewing these HR professionals and people leaders, really, I think it's probably selling them short to call them HR professionals. I mean, they're people running the people strategy at their organizations. I mean, these are great people.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think you're right, though, to call out that these aren't just HR professionals. These are the people that are the people. They're thinking about the employee experience. They're thinking about what it's like to work at this company and what culture they're going to maintain. And, I think we've we've beat this dead horse a few times, but like it's frustrating to think that they are under resourced and they're not getting what they need to produce the type of experience that people need. One last thing, if you will, from like insight from the data and from your interviews, like what is, just to set up the next episode and so forth, like what is one thing that you want to talk about in terms of just one of the interviews that you had that you were taken with, that really you felt empathy for this person and like really just felt like, man, they're the classic HR person struggling, under-resourced, not able to kind of break through the mold and like give their people what they want. Was there one interview that jumped out at you that you learned a lot from, even though you came in with a pretty well-formed perspective?
I think it was maybe more one or two that I was surprised at maybe how far behind the like mean company is, like the average company is. So I think we live in a space where we're probably like in the top quartile, let's say.
We're living on the margins.
The way we're thinking about employee experience. And that's not to pat ourselves on the
back.
And
our clients are most likely as well. And still on the margins, still waiting for the mainstream to catch up.
That was kind of the other thing too, is like a lot of the people leaders I'm used to interacting with, kind of the communities that we're a part of as we've been building Fringe, are largely companies that are in that environment of like they have some vision for the people experience. And so you start to just kind of see the world through that lens. And as I stepped out of it, we really intentionally went and talked to leaders at different kinds of organizations, some from those progressive ones, but also some from, more traditional organizations. And I think part of the reason we arrived at this insight of companies get it or they don't is there's great people leaders working at some of these average companies. And the average company is not a place that has vision yet for what that positive employee experience looks like. And so I think the challenge is they lack that vision. It's a hard place for an HR person to work. The opportunity is, that's the job, right? That's the opportunity is to be the person to cast that vision, maybe plant that seed. Obviously, you have a career to consider. You don't want to beat your head against a wall for too long, but maybe a little bit, right? In order to help. Somebody said it and it stuck with me, is like the HR person is like the culture vigilante. And I was like, yeah, that's good. It's like, but kind of their point was they're the sort of only line of defense between executives making bad decisions and like what the people actually need.
That's so sad that there needs to be a line of defense. There shouldn't need to be a line of defense. That parting shot here, and I don't mean it as a shot. I mean as an encouragement and inspiration, hopefully, to executives that are listening. You might only get one chance at this. You might only get one chance to lead an organization. Do you really think that the bottom line and selling this company for the most money you possibly could get for it, that's the meaning, that's the purpose of your life? Do you really believe that? You've got an opportunity to lead, I don't know, I get to lead about, 55 people right now. Some people get to lead 55,000, and up from there and all sorts of in between. It's an opportunity to impact people in a way, an outsized impact that most people never get an opportunity. Never get an opportunity to create an environment, to create a culture, to create a place where people can thrive. That people will remember that they'll tell to children and their grandchildren about how great it was to work at this organization because we believed in this and our mission was that and our values were these.
Right.
You're shaping families.
Yeah.
You're shaping the future. You're shaping the country, maybe multiple countries, depending on what organization you lead. Get your head out of your butt and understand that this whole thing is about people. And it's about money too. We need to make money, of course. We need to make money so we can pay these people. We need to make money because that's our job. And we got investors to report to. I got investors to report to too.
Yeah.
But, I just wanted to take a second to just speak to those executives and say, this might be your one shot of doing something great in life. And if the only thing you can say at the end of your life is that, well, the investors were expecting $100 million outcome and I got them 150.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to celebrate that at your funeral.
Right.
Not a single person is going to give a damn about that extra 50 million.
Yeah.
This thing's about people.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Maybe the one thing I'd add on to that is to people who are people leaders and managers, not within HR, that can be advocates with the HR team.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think, if you have a team and you have people that you supervise, right, you have a voice in this as well. And you can advocate alongside of the HR team for the importance of what they're doing and kind of be a voice. And oftentimes executive teams listen to the business people more than they listen to the HR people, unfortunately. But it's a place that I think people who are listening that, have that kind of responsibility in their organization can help, carry that mantle alongside of HR professionals.
All right. Well, we did it. we got our message out there today vehemently. Thank you all so much for listening. Jason, give us the word of the day, and then we're out.
Word of the day: assuage.
Assuage. Great. I'm all over that one. Thank you so much for listening to How People Work. Thank you for allowing us to emote today with you and for you. And again, if you're listening and there's something you would love us to cover, reach out to us on probably LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that.
Yep.
And let us know just what you'd love to hear about, or if there's a special guest you'd love for us to bring on the episode. We do plan to do that in the near future. Have a good one.